All right. Good evening, everybody. It's Chris from the Common Grounds Podcast and Roasters Marketplace. Tonight, we are going to be talking to JR from Third Day Coffee, Seguin, about how he got into coffee roasting and about his awesome custom roaster that he had built. He just picked it up a few weeks ago that he's been working on. And we're going to find out a lot more about JR, his story, and his journey into specialty coffee. But first, a little word from our sponsor here. Visit roastersmarketplace.com when you get done watching the show or when you get done listening to it and check it out. We've got we got 39 small batch coffee roasters on there right now, over 350 different roasts available. We've got everything from Ethiopian whoosh whoosh. We've got specialty coffee from Vietnam. We've got multiple awesome selections from Central and South America. We've got roasters all over the country, something like 22 states, 23 states. We just added another roaster this week from New Jersey called Death of the Fox Brewing Company. Really cool coffee roaster out of New Jersey. Anyway, enough about that. Visit us, roastersmarketplace.com. Let's go ahead and roll the show music with a little Dom chorus. All right, JR, good evening. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
And you're good. You're good. You were froze for just a second there. Let me go ahead and mute my phone because every time I don't, I get 700 notifications, just like I did in the intro, and it throws me all off. So, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm gonna do the same thing that you just did and make sure my phone's on mute. Okay.
Go for it.
Man, I'm doing great. How's it going up there?
It's good, man. It's good. You know, it's nice and cool here in Texas. You're just a few hundred miles to the west of me right now, but we've had a beautiful sunny day. We got to go to the park and play a little while this afternoon with the girls. So we've been having a good day and drinking some good coffee. What about you? You're still doing the 9 to 5, right?
Yes, I work 30 hours a week. I work Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. I do 10 hours, and then I'm off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it's getting to be where that's not enough to take care of all my coffee stuff that's going on. And so we are leaving the 9 to 5 in February. And it's kind of, I've been working off and on for the military in one form or another since I went into boot camp. And it's time to get away from Uncle Sam. So this is a perfect laid back occupation. It's a lot of work, but the stress level is so much less.
So tell the viewers a little bit about you, where you're coming from, and how you got into specialty coffee.
All right. So I grew up in San Antonio. I went to grade school, military grade school from kinder through 8th. I went to military high school. Catholic military high school and Catholic military grade school, Mount Sacred Heart in San Antonio, and then Central Catholic in San Antonio. And I was in the ROTC until I was a sophomore. But my dad and my uncles, they were Air Force, and I had great uncles, I think 12 of them or something like that in World War II, and then a couple in World War I. So my goal was always to graduate and go to the military. And that's exactly what I did, except that the year that I graduated, the Air Force had a freeze on recruiting. And it was so weird. The guy said, just come and check with me every Friday, and we'll get you in as soon as they, straighten this mess out. And so it used to be in San Antonio that all the recruiters were in one building. And so I would go every Friday and check in. And one Friday I went, and the Air Force guy wasn't there. In fact, the Air Force office was shut down. No lights were off and everything. And I turned around, and this Navy recruiter, man, old crusty chief, sitting in the doorway smoking a cigarette in the building. We offer everything the Air Force has to offer.
No, you don't.
And you can see the world, and so I ended up on a tin can with a small ship. doing communications electronics for 4 years and 9 months, and then I extended towards at the end of my enlistment because my ex-wife was pregnant with my son, and so after that, I just got out of the service. And the funny thing, I grew up. My dad was military, and he was overseas. He did a bunch of CI stuff, counterintelligence for the Air Force back in the 50s when they used to do real stuff. It wasn't on computers or they couldn't hack into somebody and get information. So that was on the ground. And he came back, and I mean, I drank coffee out of a percolator. That's what my dad had growing up. And that's what we knew as coffee. And then, so when you got in the military, it stepped up from a percolator to sludge on the mess decks. Uh, it was, I mean, you could shine your shoes with the stuff that they gave us in the in the military. It was terrible, terrible coffee, but it's all I knew. And so when I got out, I still drank coffee with my dad. He stepped up to a Mr. Coffee, and so I would have coffee with my dad. But in 2014, my daughter and Danielle, and a word to the wise, if you have young girls, do not let them have the internet until they're like 30. She was playing Xbox 360 with some kid in New Zealand, and she got a full ride scholarship when she graduated high school. She did one semester, and the guy sent her money, and they got her visa and everything, and she ended up in New Zealand. And so my grandson was born in 2014, and my wife Connie and I went to go visit her. And so they did instant coffee, and I thought that was normal. And we didn't leave the house because we hadn't seen Danielle in a couple of years, and the baby was new, and so we just kind of hung out at the house. I didn't know anything was different. Well, one weekend we had planned to go to Australia, and we did, and I had the most amazing coffee ever. And then I found out, they fresh roast once a week. There's like a whole bunch of roasteries in Sydney. And so I got a cup of coffee at this, it literally a cardboard box on the side of the road. It was made out of plywood. It had two doors that were barely hanging on. And the guy went over there and opened the doors, and he was selling coffee, but he ground the beans when you ordered it, not a second sooner. And he made you a fresh cup of coffee. It was just amazing. And so we went back to New Zealand, and I told my wife, I said, we got to venture out of the house. We need to go see what's around here. And so we did. And I got hooked on this coffee called Robert Harris. He's a local there, it's a chain, but it's in New Zealand. And so came back to the States and didn't think much about it, started trying to replicate it at the SB word, that chain coffee
You
place.
can say it. You can say Starbucks.
No.
Yeah, you can say it.
No, don't say it. And so anyway, I frequented that place a little bit, and then and my dad passed away in 2016, and my mom said, I want us as a family to go to the places that my dad took pictures of in Italy and Greece when he was in the military. And so there we go. We took off, and we spent 3 weeks in Italy and Greece. And that pretty much solidified my passion for good coffee. It's a culture there. I mean, you could see people on the street corner just screaming at each other, profanity, I'm sure, because I didn't understand it. And then when one guy would be like, cafe, yeah, and they would go to the nearest coffee shop and sit down and have a coffee. And so, and the coffee was amazing. Again, it was fresh roasted, made to order. So I came back, and I was very unhappy with everything that was here. And so a friend of ours from church, Carrie Evans, she gave me this little electric eye roast that sits on your counter. And she told me, well, buy some African beans that are strong and da-da-da, and roast them yourself. It had a 4-ounce capacity. And so I did that for a while, and man, it was just, it was better than,
right,
SB,
yeah.
but it just wasn't there. And so I was out grilling steaks one day on a steak grill, open flame, and I was like, I love mesquite. And so I ordered a bunch of junk from Amazon, and I put this monstrosity together, and I roasted over mesquite and 4 ounces. And I was like, okay, now I'm getting much better flavor that I want out of the coffee. I still didn't know anything about coffees. I was just buying, what I could find on Coffee Bean Corral or wherever. And so I was 4 ounces wasn't enough because I can do that. Like, I probably got more than 4 ounces in my cup right now.
That's a
And
big cup.
so it's a big cup. And it says a yawn is a silent scream for coffee. And thank you, Connie, for giving me my new favorite cup. And so anyway, I started. I've got this huge smoker pit that I built for a guy years ago, and I bought it back from him, and we've been barbecuing. It can hold like 12 briskets. It's a big one. And I looked at that, and the gear started working, and I was like, I could roast a lot of coffee in that thing. And so I don't do stainless steel. I do regular mild steel. And so a buddy of mine welded together a canister to do 8 pounds of coffee at a time. And I went through a lot of trials and a lot of burnt coffee and a lot of terrible coffee. Um, and then a guy on one of the groups, I think it was the coffee group, said, "Well, man, your beans are going too slow. They need to be running about 60 RPM." And so I went out and bought this, really expensive motor and electronics and stuff, and I wired it all up, and bam, I got coffee. And now it's starting to taste pretty good. And so I'm having a hard time regulating heat, air, and everything. And so, but people, I'm starting to share my coffee with people, and I'm starting to get requests for it, but I'm having a hard time replicating it. And so I told Connie, I said, this is a joke. This is like a hobby. I need to stop messing around, spending money on stuff. And so she goes, "Well, what do you want to do?" I said, "I don't know." So we'll pray about it. Just pray about it, and whatever God leads you to. And so I didn't pray about what to do. I prayed for divine appointments. And the next morning, I was working night shift at the time, rotating shifts. I was working at night. I got home in the morning, and I had this message on my phone, and it was a friend request. And I normally, if they don't have any friends in common, it's an automatic delete. But this one had a picture of a guy and his sons with him, and I'm like, "Well, man, that's not your normal, picture for a scam." And so I clicked on it, and minutes later, I get a message from Ashley Williams, Legacy Farms Coffee, and he's like, "Hello from Honduras," and I was like, "Hi, who are you?" And he says, "Well, my name's Ashley Williams, and I own a coffee farm in Honduras." And so I was like, "Wait, what? You do what?" And so we kind of went through the thing. He's like, "Man, I don't know how that group's got like 188,000 people. So it was a
Yeah.
total God thing that he reached out. And he started to mentor me almost immediately. And he said, "When you have trouble, call me." And so when I was having trouble with the roast, I would call him, and he would look at my roaster. I sent him some video, and he was like, "Okay, try this, do this, try to keep track of this." And so he really got from off the phone looking at a smoker barbecue pit. He got my roast dialed in. And so we got it dialed in where it was pretty consistent. And so that's when I really started. I opened the business in 2019, February 7th, and we started, selling coffee. And so that moved along a little bit. And uh, I got to the point where I was having trouble keeping up with the rig that I had. And so back and forth with Ashley again. I can't say enough about him. I see you got his coffee bag hanging behind you. Um, just an amazing individual, an amazing, family of God doing amazing work. And he just keeps reaching out, helping. And I'm like, okay, so, you got to try to get these things dialed in. And I'll talk to my wife. We prayed about it. And I said, that's it. I'm going to pull the trigger. And so I thought it would be pretty easy finding somebody who could make me a roaster, right, to use mesquite. It wasn't. I probably reached out to, I'll think there's only 3 in the United States that actually do all in-house. And then I reached out to, I think, 7 or 8 total manufacturers, and nobody said, yeah, we can do that. And then one day I get a message from this guy, and he's like, "We need to get on a phone call. I don't do this email stuff." And I'm like, okay. So I called him. It was Dan Jolliffe down there at US Roasters Corp in Oklahoma City. And he's like, "Man, I've done these before." He goes, "We'd love to do one for you." And I'm like, "Okay, that's it." He goes, "Yeah, man, that's it." And he sent me a pay schedule, and he sent me options, and 100, and it was a little more than 4 months. They normally do them in 70 days, and mine took a little more than 4 months, but they got that thing zeroed in. And so his whole thing was they wanted to make sure that I could use it without wood or with wood. And so when I didn't use it with wood, the burner had to be good enough to roast the beans where they had to put it, and then it had to have enough room for me to put the wood in above it so that it would burn as I roasted. And he did that. And so when I got that machine, man, it was night and day different. And so we started, we've been using mesquite the whole time. It just really perfected the roast, man. It did change the profile a little bit,
Right.
because, I went from cooling that usually took an hour to cooling that took 4 minutes. And it just, the coffee just, it just went up to a different level altogether, man. And so that's where we're at right now.
That's cool. I'm going to tell on myself too, because I remember seeing you start popping up in groups and talking about roasting your coffee over mesquite, and I was like, "What is this guy doing? This is cool." But my worry was, as and this comes from the roasters marketplace side, and we've got somebody singing in the bathtub behind me. I'm sure you can hear, but uh, my thing was, can this guy replicate it day in and day out on a roaster where he's roasting over mesquite on a grill? And I was like, I'm just going to watch him. Let's see what he does. Let's see how he grows. And then I know we had talked a couple times because we're both veterans and we're both in a couple other groups together. And then you're like, I'm getting a roaster. I was like, ding. All right, let's see what he's got. And that's when I reached out to you the first time, and we talked a little bit then, and you were hesitant. You're like, you looked at the caliber of roasters on my website. You're like, I don't know if I'm there yet. And I was like, just come on, you got it. And you were super excited when you went and got your roaster. That was how long have you had it now?
Uh, let's see. I went back in June, maybe June or July. It might have been August. I think I got it in August. I think I went and picked it up in August. Yeah, I remember that conversation we had, and I really wasn't. My major concern was I had finally learned how to roast on my barbecue pit. The barbecue pit I have is 36-inch diameter pipe, and the body is 4 feet long. It's got an offset of 2 feet for the firebox that is also 30-inch diameter.
Texas barbecue grill. That's how we roll.
It is. It is. And let me tell you, it pained me to open the lid and start cutting on this thing with a torch. And I cut holes in the bottom of it to put in a propane burner because Ashley assured me that there was no way I was going to be able to regulate heat just burning mesquite. And he was right. And he also made a remark that I was going to have trouble regulating air, which is something that I struggled with the entire time I used it. But yeah, it was a little bit of I was a huge gamble, really, because I was afraid that my coffee was not going to taste the same anymore.
Right.
And not only did I maintain the mesquite flavor, but the coffee just went to a different level altogether. And it's funny right now. I have a friend of mine, and I absolutely support Black Rifle. I support them. I bought coffee from them forever. I think they have a great mission, and they have a coffee called Calf, and it's supposed to be a really high caffeine, and that's what it's called, right? We can't say the name on air because it's foul, but a friend of mine, that's all he drank. He would buy 4 or 5 bags on subscription a month, and so he asked me if I could do something similar, and I was like, I don't know, man, I don't know. And so I'm using Ashley again. All my coffee comes from Ashley. I have one blend, Strong and Courageous, that is a Ethiopian Rwandan blend, and that's my wife's favorite. And so I maintain that one. Everything else comes from Ashley. I do my Isaiah, which is my medium roast, the Esau, the dark roast, and the new one that we developed through my friend Chris Goldsmith. He is called Revelation because it will open your eyes. And it's a mix of the Legacy Farms Lempira red honey process, and I use 4 pounds of that, and then I mix it with 2 pounds of Guatemalan Robusta beans, and I do a light roast on it. And the Guatemalan beans have a real nutty, uh, flavor to them. You can really, it's really profound. And then Ashley's coffee is just amazing. So it's a perfect mix. And since I developed it and Chris started buying it, that's all I've been drinking. I just drink that all the time. But it's been an amazing trip, from cooking on a barbecue grill with some little junk that I bought on Amazon to the machine that I have now, and I just went up to Kansas and picked up 6 bags of coffee or 5 bags of coffee from Ashley, and so and I'm already probably by Tuesday or Wednesday I'll be through the first bag.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it's really the coffee's come out amazing.
So we're going back it up just a little bit, and what I want you to do is tell us a little bit about, you've got a special mission with Third Day Coffee. So tell us about that, and tell us about how that relates to your coffee names as well, because some of our viewers might not have caught the biblical references in your coffee names.
Right. So yeah, our when we decided that we were gonna make a go of this somehow, um, it for me it couldn't be about business. It had to be uh, when dad when my dad died in 2016. It was shortly after that I'd surrendered my life to Christ, um, and God has just blessed us just amazingly. My wife hates it when I say that word, but we are absolutely blessed beyond measure. And When I prayed about doing something with the coffee, um, I had some friends over. We were having coffee, and he's like, this is a business and a ministry wrapped up in one. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, well, how many times do we get together just to have coffee, but then we end up talking about God? And I'm like, well, we always talk about God, but we don't always talk about coffee. He says, yeah, but every time we're together, we have coffee. And I'm like, man, it's true. So we really prayed about that. And our name comes from Luke 20, 24 and 46. Did I say that right? Or is it 46 and 24? I have to look. It's 24 and 46. And it says that the Christ will suffer and die. And on the third day, he'll be raised again. And he'll be raised again on the third day. And so that's where the name Third Day Coffee comes from. And our goal with our coffee business is to have a God-driven ministry in our community to support people in need, and the avenue to get there, the vehicle to get there, is through coffee. And so our game plan is to sell enough coffee to pay the bills and have enough left over to pour into a ministry. And because we're veterans and because we see so much of this, I was in the Navy in the 90s. And so I mean, listen, the worst thing, my worst day in the Navy was running out of money before payday, because I didn't have enough money to go to the clubbing, and drink. I mean, that was literally my life back then. And so I can't relate to the veterans today that are coming off the battlefield. And so in 2008, I guess, I started working with guys that were at Fisher House and Prowess House, and they were at the hospital. They were recovering from the battlefield wounds and things. And it just changed. I realized what a need we have. And, you see people all the time doing the 22 push-ups and all that stuff. And Doc Joslin, he's one of the other guys in one of the groups that we're in. I listened to a podcast he did. He says, that's all. I'm not going to beat anybody up for doing that. He goes, but what are you doing on day 23? What are you doing on day 24? What are you doing on day 25 to bring awareness to veteran suicide and stuff like that? And so he and I talked quite a bit about that situation. And what we really want to do with our ministry, with our business, um, is to be able to provide not just veterans, but anybody who's got addiction problems or whatever, that there is a different path that you can take. You don't have to swallow a bunch of pills, to be okay with things that are going on. And I think you and I know well the VA does that, blindly. They just throw stuff at you. Here, take this. Okay, here, take this. Here, take this. And we are in no way advocating, taking all your pills and throwing them in the trash and trying to go at it. But we just want people to know that there is another resource out there that is inexhaustible. And so that's what Third Day Coffee is all about. And my hat came from JD Tyranny. He's in one of the groups, Get Southpaw Laser Concepts, and he made this hat for me. It says "Pray," and so it just fits perfectly with our business model. And so anyway, that's what Third Day Coffee is all about. We want to do ministry. We want to help people, that are having trouble finding the light, and the vehicle that we're going to use to get there is going to be not just good coffee, but amazing coffee. I mean, I'm sure you've probably had Ashley's coffee from more than one roaster. And now that you've chatted with him, you know what he's doing down there with the people that he's with.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting thing to be able to see different people's take on different coffee, and that's one reason you're also December's Roaster's Choice coffee. So you've got 10 bags. I've actually got two more bags. I got two more orders I need to send you for that batch. So you've got a dozen bags going out from me here in the next few days to people all over the country, including myself, because I can't wait to try it as well. But it's just different. It's just interesting the different takes on coffee from different people, and how different roasters can take the same bean and get a phenomenally different roast profile or taste profile from that roast and the way they roasted it. Uh, it's just like a steak. It's just, or just more along our lines. It's just like a brisket. It's like, what are you rubbing on the brisket? How long are you cooking it, and what temperature you're cooking it at? And I mean, we're not rubbing anything on the beans, but it's the same concept. What's your charge temperature? How long you're keeping it there? What's your rate of rise look like? These are all things that affect the taste of the coffee, and then your ingredients. Are you using wagyu? Are you using wagyu brisket, or are you using choice? Right? What's going on? Uh,
Yeah,
this show is now about brisket, everybody.
I know,
That's what we're
right?
talking about. Or is barbacoa your thing down in San Antonio? A little bit more, or brisket still is big?
No, brisket's still
Brisket's
still a
still king.
monster.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I have a friend, Garcia's Mexican restaurant here in San Antonio, and I've been my dad knew his dad for many, 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 many years before John and I ever met each other. And in school, we went to high school together, and they have this restaurant, and I think they came out like second or third in the country for best brisket tacos.
nice.
And his brother's got this thing down to a science. And I've bought briskets from them. I bought their rub from them. I've seen them do it, and
They need a they need a third day coffee rub.
they do. And I can't make brisket like that, but yeah, they that's we're actually, it's funny that you joke around about that, but I've got a friend of mine that made some bacon with our coffee, as he made the brine, rub with it, the brine solution or whatever, and it came out pretty good. I actually quite enjoyed it. It wasn't as profound as I thought it would be, the coffee flavor, but
My buddy Tom over here on YouTube says smoked beans, nutty light roast, brisket talk sold. So he's on there. He's checking this thing. Thanks for tuning in tonight, Tom. Tuning into the show. But it's such a cool thing that you're doing. And have you ran across any other roaster? I know of one roaster out in Las Vegas that roasts over wood. Uh, but have you ran anybody else? Let me rephrase that. Have you ran into anybody else that's roasting over mesquite?
No, the way I got the idea is a friend of mine from work. He's like, "Hey man, have you tried this coffee? You know, it's in Austin, and they do straight up wood. You know." And so I looked them up, and sure enough, man, they made this huge thing with a bicycle, and the guy sits in the bicycle and pedals it at it rotates the beans and but they do theirs completely over wood. They don't use any propane or anything. um, and so Connie and I went up there one weekend. And I said, well, we need to go try this coffee. I need to go check it out. And so we did. And the coffee that was fire roasted, the smoke was overpowering. You know, you didn't really get to enjoy the coffee. uh, and they were using oak, and I don't like to use oak because to me it's too strong for, you know, I like a hint. I don't like saturated with mesquite, and so the coffee is the same way. Um, I have not run into anybody else. I usually find people that either do, you know, never done wood at all, or they do. You know, I've only seen one place really, maybe two that do just fire roasted, and so but you know, I know they do them somewhere because the guy that I bought the roaster from said that he's made them before.
Yeah.
Because it's not very often, but every now and then somebody wants one, and so we build it custom. Uh, and so it's definitely unique, man. I mean, I wish you could have had the coffee ahead of time, um, you know, so you could have tried it, you know, and understand. But it's just really different, and that's what I wanted, you know, after being, you know, and it's not that I'm any kind of connoisseur. I'm no expert for sure. But you know, I've been to Australia and New Zealand and Italy and Greece, and I've had coffee in all these places, and they have really good coffee.
Yeah.
And so to come back and then to be able to get a coffee that I'm happy with was a struggle for me personally first. And then I was nervous about letting anybody try it, you know, because I'm like, it might really, really suck. And but that wasn't the case. And then, you know, for the longest time I was trolling the groups and I would send samples. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
got started. I'd see somebody having a conversation about coffee. I'm like, hey, listen, I'll send you some free samples. You know, you want some free samples? And I would send the coffee out, and they were like, man, this is amazing. Send me some more. And so that's kind of how we, you know, kind of started to get our name. And of course, you know, since then it's just been, it's a real business now. It's not a hobby anymore. And it's just been a real blessing for us, you know, especially that I get to leave my 9 to 5, and I get to do something that I absolutely love. And I know I have confidence now that the product is where it should be.
I think you've got, and I don't know if we've talked about this, but just the everybody from Texas loves Texas. Everything is Texas, and it's bigger. Texas is bigger, this biggest state in the country. To anybody from Texas, it's you know, I don't think I've ever went into a house in Missouri and saw a plaque that says something about Missouri, or it's just you walk into a Texas house and there's a state emblem or a state flag somewhere that says Texas. There's just being in the military, if you went to some sort of location, somebody was whipping out a Texas flag and taking a picture under the swords in Baghdad. You're like, Texas has not conquered Iraq. Why are you? What is up with the flag? But what I'm saying is, you've got the ability to really brand yourself, and because you're taking that mesquite element, you're taking that Southwest Texas, what they're known for, what you're known for in that area, uh, and being able to take part of the identity of Texas and incorporate it into your beans, into your actual product, without just slapping the name of Texas on it. That's, you can't grow coffee in Texas. Okay, so what are you doing? Propane and mesquite, both those are probably from Texas. right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but you get what
All
I'm
the mesquite.
saying.
Yeah, for sure. All the mesquite that I've used so far. We live on 10 acres out in the country, and I always, I mean, I don't give my mesquite away to anybody. Yeah, hey, I'll come get some mesquite. So that's all right. I'll take care of it. Thanks. I do give some away to friends occasionally, but I stack it, and I've got piles of mesquite here and there. And this one's from last year, and this one's from 2 years ago. And I use the old stuff. It's more seasoned, and so I try not to use the green stuff for anything, whether I'm cooking or for the coffee. And so I've got enough, on the property. And yeah, I really feel like it's going to that's what's going to give me the competitive edge when I have to, and I'm not really competing with anybody. My wife and I have talked about this many times. My coffee is unique in the fact that, that we are using mesquite. And so, and I'm not out there I'm not out to be a veteran outfit like BRCC, or I'm not out to beat up the chain uh, coffee shops that we have all over the place. I'm gonna do me, and Third Day Coffee is just who we are, and that's who we're gonna be, and we are Texas. I mean, I was born and raised in San Antonio. My dad was born and raised. In fact, my family finds its roots all the way back to when they had to make a decision whether to stay in Texas or go back to Mexico. And my family chose to stay here, in Texas in Atascosa County. And so I can go back generations and generations. And so we're very proud Texans. And of course, how they in the military, we just try to kick everybody in the teeth. And I remember all the jokes about, you know, fencing in Oklahoma and all kinds of stuff. I mean, I just, and it's funny, especially when you're in the service, you gravitate towards other Texans. It's just a thing. But uh, I think even tighter than the Texas community really is the veteran community, because I've really got a lot of support from the veteran community,
Oh yeah,
you know. And so, but yeah, it's been a real. I'll tell you, I can't tell you how blessed we are to be where we're at, to be able to. I mean, I don't even know why. I mean, what made me think about all that stuff? I really don't have a clue how I thought, man, mesquite and coffee, that'd be great. Just like bacon and coffee, or, bacon and everything. And so,
it's great. But
yeah, it really is.
it goes to show what you. I guess you wanted to combine two things that you were passionate about, and you had the tools there already, and you've continued to develop that uh, with where you're going with the company. What has changed now that you've gotten more into? Uh, when you first started roasting, let's back that up. When you first started roasting, were you cupping at all? Did you cup?
No.
Okay.
And I still do not go through the cupping process like, traditional cupping process. I know I've just recently given Ashley some of my coffee, and they're going to take it down. They're going to cup it, and then they're going to give me a score on it. And then they're going to also, he's going to send somebody down there that's going to check the caffeine content, because one of the selling points that we would like to have is to be able to say that we've got more caffeine than some of the other options that
Right.
are out there on the market. So as far as that goes, but just the flavor myself doing the coffee. It's funny. I watched a guy one time, because YouTube is like everything today, right? If you needed to learn how to do something, you just go to YouTube it.
YouTube.
Yeah, and so I YouTubed uh, this guy when I made the deposit on the roaster, but I hadn't had it. I hadn't gotten it yet, and so I was watching this guy, and I love it. He went through all the science. He went through the charge temps and the turn point and rate of rise and the drying, period, and then where you choose to to drop your beans. And he went through all the technical and scientific side of it. And it was funny because he said, all this stuff means nothing if you get to the end over here and you don't like the way your coffee tastes. And so, you can throw all that stuff in the garbage if you end up with a product that you wouldn't drink or give to somebody else to drink. And so I've sort of got to that part first, and I'm catching up on the science. And so, I mean, I understand how because of the new roaster, and I use the artisan software, and so I'm really able to track. And I taste every one of my coffees. So would you say I cup them? Yeah, I don't do it the way they do it, but I do every single batch. I have to make coffee with it, because and then if I don't like the way, if it's not, something's different, I'll go back to my data logger, and I'll see, because I put a number on every single batch that I do, so I know where they're at in line, and I can go back and look and see, okay, well, my air was not the same after, and I keep track of everything, how many minutes. Ashley helped me work through some of the stuff, as far as getting the timing down. And so I would go back and see, okay, well, I didn't turn my air up until 2 minutes later. And so you can see that it's funny, those little things that you do that actually change the flavor of the coffee on the other end. And it doesn't take much, if it's a little too hot, or if you got a little too much air or not enough air, it makes a difference. And so
That's
I'm
why
learning.
go ahead.
What's that?
That when you get, now I know you placed an order on the website here a few days ago for the Ethiopian Wush Wush that I've been now talking about
Yeah.
for weeks. When you get it, I want you to look at it and think about the time it took for Jen to dial that in, and for like the level that she's playing at with that roast, because not two beans are the same size, not two beans are the same makeup. It's not like there's, it's not a whole batch of red Limpura where the beans are roughly the same size, if not really, really close together. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that is dark, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in there that's light, and there's a whole bunch of stuff that's medium, and it's just in between, because it's what was read the day the guy went out and picked it on the hillside, and he doesn't know what it is. It's just, and the reason I bring that up is it's such an art, even though you can get all that science behind it with the artisan equipment and your probes and all of that. It's still an art form to know when to dump that roast, and it's really cool. You're going to love that coffee. That coffee is going to knock your socks off. You're going to be like, this is crazy.
That's what I keep hearing, so I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, I can't say Tom, actually, who is watching on over there on YouTube. I'm not going to repeat what his comments were to me after he got his bag in the mail, but he couldn't believe it either. It's just, if I would have had that coffee prior to getting into coffee, I probably wouldn't have liked it, and I wouldn't be able to look at those beans in my hand and appreciate the work that went into that, to dialing something like that in. And it's the same way with when you're working with a roast too, to go from something that's green and no flavor that you want in a cup to your end product. What do you find the most challenging part of roasting a new bean on your roaster that nobody else is doing it like the way you're doing it?
I think probably one of the most challenging things really is, again, some of the beans, like the revelation that I've just put together. I had to get with Ashley on that, because it's two different size beans, and the moisture content's different. I've got Ashley really did. He's just mentoring me like nobody's business. And so there's a different moisture content in those two beans. And initially I was roasting them together, and the red Limpura would come out a little past medium, and the Guatemalan beans would be a light blonde, which is, I was trying to get them all even. And he's like, well, but then, after I talked to Ashley a little bit, the light bulb came on. I'm like, I got to roast them separately.
Mm-hmm.
Duh. And so we started doing that, and that's when the coffee really just like boom. I was like, okay, that's what we're going to sell. And so not knowing, uh, you know, coffee like some of the people do before they buy a $25 roaster is probably one of the biggest challenges, you know. But again, I can't say enough. You can see the charts in the back; those are from Ashley. I talk to him a lot. I ask him a lot of questions because he's just, I don't know. My knowledge is not there. I know what I want my coffee to taste like.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what drove me. I mean, going overseas messed me up. I had great coffee, and all of a sudden, Folgers uh, is a joke. And I mean, God bless them; they've been around forever. But even Connie, she's been watching me do this, and she's like, "Okay, you're crazy about coffee. You need to stop talking about coffee." And and then we went to Ashley's, and she got to talk to Julia and Ashley and the boys, and just understand the whole process, and the fact that, I mean, this guy doesn't have to help anybody. He's got his own thing going, but he really does, and he doesn't help just me.
Right.
He's helping lots of people. But I think, when you if you know more about the science, and you know more about the beans, and I sold coffee to a guy the other day. He knew way more about coffee than I mean, he was way over my head. And he was talking about, because the Ethiopian Rwandan mix, and he started talking about one of the beans and how they got these blueberry notes, and I mean, he was all over it. And I'm like, yeah, man, well, you're gonna love it. I know why. I was like, what is he talking about? I had to go back and look it up. I was like, okay, well, these coffees from this region, you know. And so again, it's a learning process. I started doing the same thing. The Guatemalan beans that I have, I did do some research on them, and they talk about when you do a light roast, you're supposed to get all these nutty, notes and stuff out of them, and then and so it's a learning process. I think that's probably the hardest thing for me, is that I don't know as much as I probably should have known before I just dove, head first into
Eh,
this.
I,
But
my wife would tell you the same thing about me right now. The exact same thing. And I had I put a cup of coffee on the bathroom counter for her this morning, and I was like, "Here you go." And she's like, "Well, where's it from? Where's it? Who's it by?" And I was like, "Well, it's Hardee's from New Jersey, and it's actually a Rwandan coffee." And she's like, "Guess it'll work." Like she doesn't care. She doesn't care at 5:45 in the morning. She just wants coffee. Uh, but an hour later, I'll get her opinion on it, whether it was good or not, or whether I need to send some more, whether just to work. But it is a journey, and there's so much to learn about it. And that's one of the reasons why I started the show, was not only to talk to coffee roasters and other people in the coffee community, but to learn about coffee, because there's so much to it. And I can't
there is,
exactly get up in the morning and have a craft beer first thing. You know, I've got kids to watch, so it's
yeah,
frowned upon.
yeah, yeah.
So what are your plans right now as a small batch roaster moving into full time commercial production? What is your what is your game plan besides sell a bunch of coffee right off the bat? How are you going to go about it?
Yeah, so the initial plan, the game plan, uh, because of the COVID, some of the things that our president passed, I was allowed to take up to $100,000 of my 401 out. And so I spoke with my financial advisor. We went back and forth, and we made the decision that I was going to pull my 401, and that's what I was going to start my business with, because that's right now. And I didn't have enough in there. Long story short, but I didn't have enough in there to retire on anyway. And so um, we decided that I was going to do that. And so my wife and I started looking for locations around town that we really wanted. There's really a piece of property. It's bare land that I really want, that's across from the university here in Seguin, from TLU, from the football field. and that would be a fantastic location. And it's like 5 or 6 acres, so I could do car shows and concerts and whatever with a piece of land that big. But that's not where we're at. And so she's like, okay, listen, we got to focus. February, okay, so let's find a place. Let's lease it for a year. Move in there because I mean the tapestry that you see right here on my, I guess on my right hand side, is covering up stainless shelving. And then, I guess that's the wrong way, but you can see all the coffee that's behind me in my office. And then you can't see anything up here because it's all flooded with labels and bags. And then I've completely taken over the kitchen and the dining room. And then I've got a 16-foot by 8-foot trailer outside that's got the roaster and everything else. And so the game plan was going to be to get a place, to offer them a set amount of money for the 1 year cash, and get a good price for a location. And the other day, my wife's like, you know what? I've been thinking about this, and what if we just, because all my business right now is online, all of it. We have gone out to locations and we've done a live, and we plan to do some more of the, whenever this we're allowed to. We want to do the farmers markets and stuff like that. And so we're definitely we're going to set the trailer up for that. But what we're going to do for the short term, we decided to save all that money for a year lease. And I'm going to buy 2 shipping containers, 2 20-foot shipping containers, and I'm going to cut the walls out, weld them together, and I'm going to have a 20 by 16. And that's where we're going to set up shop. And so we're gonna set it up in there so we can have workflow. Right now, my best friend John Gonzalez, he comes over and he's actually in the other room right now grinding coffee and getting the orders ready to ship. And so it's a lot. And we've went from nothing to a lot in a very short period of time. And so going forward, we have to have a place to work is the biggest immediate need. And so we're going to do that. We've got the land, and shipping containers are cheap. And so we're going to put 2 of them together, and we're going to make our workshop. And then from there, we'll refill the coffers. And once we get to a point where we can buy that piece of land that we want, the end game is to buy that land, build it to suit, and open a full service. But I want to keep the 2 businesses always separate. I do want to have a full service drive-through coffee shop in town because I want to have a place where people can come. They can come into my house and I'll pray for them here. They can come to my house and I'll give them clothes if they need clothes, or food if they need food. But, you really need to have a place where the community knows, and the community can say, hey, go see JR at Third Day. He'll set you up with some food, or he'll set you up with some clothes, or, if you need a job, maybe he can help you out, whatever. And so that's the end game. But the interim right now, February, the last day of February is my last day of work. And so March 1st, I need to be in a building that we're going to put up together here so we can continue to move forward. It's kind of chaotic right now. I'll probably, as soon as we get off of this, I'm going to be roasting until probably, 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. But it's beautiful. I mean, it's a great problem to have.
I'm going to have to, once you get the shipping containers out there, we're going to have to make a trip out and check it out and do maybe a live broadcast from there, do some video, do some pictures for you. Because it's just,
Absolutely.
I just love what you're doing and how you're approaching it, and the different. You're welding it together. You're welding it together. You're going to buy 2 shipping containers and we're going to weld them together. You welded together your first coffee roaster, so you might as well weld together your first coffee roastery, right?
Yeah. And it's funny because welding was my first adult passion. I was a commercial welder in Houston with Van Delden Company, one of my best friends, Teddy Van Delden. And I did that and I loved it. And I didn't know I was going to be a welder. He said, I need somebody. Let's go. Okay. I was out of work. I went with him and he's like, all right, you're going to learn how to weld. Okay. And so that was my first passion. And then to think, so many years down the road that it would come full circle to you know, uh, I'm going to weld together my shop where I'm going to roast coffee. It's just cool.
Awesome. It's going to be awesome. I've slept in a bunch of shipping containers. I don't think I've ever had any coffee that was roasted in them. But I've seen people talking on the Coffee Roasters Forum. You're on that group, right? On Facebook, the Coffee Roasters Forum
Yes.
group. I've seen them talk about doing roasteries in shipping containers. They make office buildings. We got a really cool little office building here, the Woodlands. It's like 6 levels of shipping containers all stacked up on top of each other. It's pretty cool.
Wow.
But we're about out of time, but I want to tell everybody what's coming up next week. Next week, as long as something doesn't come up, I'm going to be talking to Chris from Purify Coffee Roasters. And if you're going to tune into the show next week, JR, this is a show that you're going to want to watch because Chris has an amazing story. I don't know if you've ever ran into him as well, but one of the things he does is he takes underprivileged youth and puts them to work selling his coffee at the farmers markets. So that's how he's able to cover a couple different Houston farmers markets, is because he's taken these kids under his wing. Awesome, phenomenal story that you'll have to tune into next time. But before we get off here, tell everybody where they can find you at right now.
Yes. So we are 100% online, and it's www.thirddaycoffeeseguin.com. No spaces or anything. We're on Facebook, Third Day Coffee Seguin, Instagram, uh, Twitter, Pinterest, all of it. You can find us by looking up. Don't look up Third Day Coffee. If you look up Third Day Coffee, you're going to find Third Day Coffee in the UK. So make sure that you don't forget to put Seguin at the end of it. And we will definitely pop up. And, if you Google roasters, coffee roasters in the Seguin area, we pop up on Google there. And so, but the easiest way really is Facebook or the website.
And you're on Instagram as well.
Yes.
All right. And you can actually find Third Day Coffee Seguin on Roasters Marketplace as well.
Yes.
Our only wood-fired coffee roaster. As of now.
That's a good distinction among 300 roasters.
Well, not 39 roasters. We're not that big yet. I wish we had 300. That'd be a full-time gig. But hey, JR, thank you so much for coming on. This is your second appearance in less than a month on the Common Grounds podcast, and we really appreciate you coming on. We really appreciate you being part of Roasters Marketplace, and keep on roasting coffee and spreading the word and doing what you're doing. And I want to have you on the show again when you start, even if it's just an update or if it's just some pictures. I can't wait to watch you build this thing.
It's going to be fun. That's for sure.
Definitely. I appreciate you having the show. Being on the show. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to drop you down in the green room and I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Chris.
Oh, that's the wrong button. Here we go. Hold on here. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening down the road on the podcast or watching on YouTube or Facebook or wherever you're tuning in at. We really appreciate your support. Let us know how we're doing in the comments. Let us know how we're doing on a review. You can check us out at roastersmarketplace.com. You can check us out on the Common Grounds podcast on your favorite podcast player. We've got some really awesome specials going on right now on the website. Holiday bundles, all that good stuff. We really appreciate you watching once again, and stay safe. Happy holidays. If you don't see me again, well, you should. I've got 2 more shows scheduled for this month. But anyway, see you next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great night. Go out with a little Dom Coors if I can find that video. Here we go.